All right, so today is May the 10th. Um, we're here with Adolfo Romero to hear about SPOHP, his history, and his story with SPOHP, and also about SPOHP's history. So let's start with your name, your background. I mean, tell us about yourself, and then we can continue with the other questions.
Fantastic. All right. Well, thank you so much, Helio, for inviting me and having me here today. This is definitely a special interview. I feel, throughout the years I've been here now at SPOP over, I want to say almost in my fifth year. And there's my trajectory has been quite interesting. And I'm definitely not the same person when I started to where I'm at now. But going a little bit before that, let's go back into my day, back in the day when I was a young fellow. So I was born and raised in Chicago, Illinois, the windy city of Chicago. Beautiful, gorgeous place, but obviously not as beautiful as Gainesville, right? And we're out here. But I had my two parents. I'm half Salvadorian, half Mexican. My mother's Mexican from that side. And I grew up in a traditional, predominantly Latino neighborhood. Throughout the years, I remember, growing up in the Chicago public school education system, it provided some information about like higher education and what do I want to do when I grow up. But at the same time, back in the day, there even up to this day, there's a lot of lack of resources, even within those TPS schools. So eventually, what I ended up doing, in my 8th grade experience, I remember that I joined in this one program called Enlace, which helps Latino students sort of like it doesn't find out who they are, but more like create leaders amongst themselves, gain a lot of leadership traits. And why am I saying that or stating this specific narrative of my past? Because I feel that's the narrative or that specific scenario situation is the one that embarked me to keep going with school, keep going and moving to the next level, whatever that may be in life. And I knew for me it was, I was inculcated since I was young, go to school. But at the same time, being in a low income household, first generation, your parents, it's easier said than done. They want the best for you, but how do you go about moving forward? Fortunate enough, I ended up going to University of Illinois at Chicago. Well, I had to move away from there for various reasons. I had to redo everything again at community college. Ended up going to O'Hara Washington Community College, got my AA, and then transferred to Northeastern Illinois University, and I got my BA. During those times, I realized that I was a very dedicated student, and I ended up joining programs like McNair's that helps first generation low income students to sort of promote the image of what is higher education. What does that mean? How do we go about that? And how do you move through it? How do you navigate? Coming from my household, obviously, like my family did not obtain to the level that I wish for one day to become, and I have become to an extent, at least with my MA, which fortunately enough, I ended up graduating with Latin American Studies degree, Spanish degree, and a Human Resources Development minor degree. I remember on my senior year, I ended up going to Purdue University, where I also did extensive research on Latin American studies and specifically novelas and so forth. But I realized I had the knack for that, for like actually doing research. I like doing research. I like knowledge. I like learning more. I feel you're only going to become as great as the knowledge that you have obtained throughout the years. And wisdom too. I mean, wisdom is learned through many modes, from experiences, living with your communities, living with your family, living in the institution, and so forth. And that makes the character that you are. When I ended up graduating with my BA, I ended up I applied to UF, and honestly, this was one of the first schools that I got accepted to. And when I got accepted here, honestly, I got accepted to a couple other schools, and I was like, you know what, I want to start my life all over somewhere else new, and kind of dive in, learn more, just grow at a different level that I haven't experienced before, and that's when I came to UF. And when I started UF, I did my MA in Latin American Studies. From there, I moved to at the same time, while I was getting my Latin American Studies degree with a specialization of Latinx migration transnational studies, I ended up working at the Samuel Proctor Oral History Program. That was actually my first job at UF. And I started as a graduate assistant. And once I worked as a graduate assistant, my position at SPOHP was a coordinator specifically for LDAP, for the Latinx Diaspora in the Americas collection that was created by Hennessy's Lara, who's recently a graduate, if I'm not mistaken, from Urban University in California.
In California, yes.
And so it's been an exciting role working here at SPOHP over the years, and seeing the program itself evolve from what it used to be to what it is now. And obviously, when I came in, it was a whole different time. We had 20 students running up and down all around, you could just imagine. So many projects happening, documentaries happening, podcasts, newsletters, Gainesville history, timeline, so much going on. And I remember one of my first introductions through the program that put me in touch with the community out in the open was through my mentor at that time, or my boss at that time, who was Juanita Duque. And she invited me. I remember she has, up to this day, like, she's the one that invited me to the community to join in the Latino Film Festival, which eventually, I remember last year or a couple of years ago, I also ended up working with them and kept that alive for a while. We've been keeping those projects alive as much as we can, at least in the past. But that was a little taste that I had through SPOHP with the community and what it means to partake within the community. Before that, I wouldn't say I was too heavily involved with the community the way that I'm here, but I was definitely involved in other regions, in other areas, such as working in literature, newspapers, or working in plays, actual plays, and trying to figure out who I am and what do I want to do with life. But I recently graduated back in 2021, and once I finished, I was offered a higher position from coordinator, project coordinator, became main coordinator, senior coordinator, and then assistant director. And I think through that position, I was able to exponentially grow more than I've ever thought I could potentially do in the amount of span of time. And that meant a lot of responsibility behind that I have to make sure that we could get through within the program. Yeah.
All right. So that's fascinating to hear, and it's really fascinating to hear from you and to see how your own trajectory, your personal background, and also academic and intellectual background is so related to what SPOHP is and how you fit so well here in the program. So yeah, that's fascinating. So as someone who knows SPOHP more than almost anyone, what is the original mission of the program, and how has that mission evolved over time from your perspective, especially after being assistant director here?
Okay. So to understand SPOHP, we have to understand that SPOHP is a very transitional stage for students, grad students that come in. So we have to take that into consideration. Every cohort that comes in here, they bring their own ideas, their creativity, and as time progresses, they transition out. And then the next cohort comes in with great ideas and builds off each other's ideas from the previous generations. So for me, that evolution I've been able to see that, but I've also been able to see when we went unfortunately through the pandemic. The pandemic was a whole different scenario for SPOHP, and not just for SPOHP, for the world. Let's face it. We had to transition from a lot of the things that we do in a specific way to a different way, like such as having meetings day by day in person versus going into hybrid, Zoom, the Zoom era, jumping in, going into interview by interview. I still remember up to this date, we had over like 12 meetings per week on everything. And there was meetings for everything. So, I saw a lot of people virtually, which kind of has a different dynamic, especially when, we're a people's program, work for the people. But going back to the mission statement that you told me, well, I'm going to read you a real quick synopsis of what, actually, we put this together. Let me show you real quick. Back in the day, we used to do, well, we still do booklets, but definitely have grown from what this one was. This was back from working during the pandemic and some of the projects that we ended up doing. But mission statement over here was, many know, the Samuel Proctor was established in 1967 by Dr. Samuel Proctor, the Samuel Proctor. Our mission at SPOHP is to gather, preserve, and promote living histories of individuals from all walks of life. Oral history puts students in direct dialogue with people who have changed the world. SPOHP emphasizes rigorous collaborative research, civic engagement, and digital technology that makes history accessible, democratic, and fun. So I'll leave it at that. So what is our mission statement? Ultimately, what we're trying to do here, right? We capture the oral histories of individuals. Let's break that down. We capture, we preserve, and we promote. I think during my time frame, a big key to what we were doing, it was mainly promote. How do we effectively promote the material that we have been creating? Well, I remember when I was mentioning before, well, during the first semester I came in here, I remember there were a lot of staff, plenty of staff. A lot of them would do interviews and everything. But during the pandemic, which was one of the biggest hits, we sort of had to slow down. Remember, we were all quarantined. You can't really go out or interview. And if you do, it was going to be through Zoom. And so we sort of had to navigate that system. How did we go about interviewing? What type of equipment do we need? We had to gather ourselves and sort of reevaluate our equipment. And that means getting new equipment such as cameras for the computer. Instead of using like 720 pixels, now you're using 1080 pixels. Simple things like those. But of course, you could fix that from your end. You can never fix it from somebody else's end unless they have similar type of equipment. Promoting the living histories of individuals has been a quite special component because ultimately, one realization that we have had over the years is like we have so many amazing interviews, and even interviews prior or digitization era, before the digital era, that are right behind us at the archive room actually, and they're still in cassettes. But what the information is, there's not as accessible. So what we've been working is making it more accessible, open access to folks. Another thing that we've been trying to do is, now that we know these interviews, how do we empower those interviews? How can we talk about specific issues, situations that promote some type of change, or if it's not change, a conversation between students, whether it's students, faculty, politicians, researchers, whoever it may be. How do you stimulate those conversations and get them started? And that's been sort of some of the keys that I've been working throughout my time here at SPOHP. Mm-hmm. An example would be, I do have right here, content. How do we create content that could be accessible to individuals? For example, here we have history of organizing at UF, things that have happened at UF. But while it is a zine, it also offers the opportunity for the individual to interact with this by following the QR code. They have access to this, but also within the document, you have access to interviews, you have specific events that occur at UF, and so forth. This is one of many collections that we have. So let me see what else I have here. I know I brought a couple things. And so, luckily, I think one of the biggest projects that we did over my time here that I took over as assistant director was that I'm proud to say is the Challenging Racism at UF grant that we had. And that grant specifically, we're able to understand a little bit more in depth on why does racism exist at the university. Sure, racism's all around us. You could say that to an extent, but was it intentional that it just started from the get-go, or it's just this year we're going to be the way that we are? No. In order to understand that, you have to understand the legacy of exclusion within an institution or wherever that may be. And a lot of the work that we did, we were funded a lot of it through the provost department. But this past, with the political climate currently and other situations behind that, we haven't been able to receive those type of federal grants or grant money that we would receive. So that's how we ended up switching to more grant writing, creating grants to support projects, not just for the program itself, but projects that benefit the students, that benefits them to gain skill sets that they probably wouldn't have otherwise. And that includes, working on the grants, working on a specific grant, and having an opportunity to interact at that level, educational level, with administrators, with PIs, with other researchers. So we provide that opportunity through the grant writings. Obviously, this is just one grant, the one that I'm mentioning, but that's the latest one that we've done, hence I'm putting more attention to it. But right now, yesterday, we had the Catawba Nation joined us, come in, and we're repatriating a lot of those audio files that were recorded back in the late 60s all the way into like early 80s, late 80s, early 90s. And we're repatriating all that. So we have grants for all that. That's through the Doris Duke Foundation. This one, the one I'm talking about, is by UF with the Challenging Racism at UF grant. But we want to provide one thing that we realize is a lot of people, there's a lack of knowledge about what's going on. Like they might know the contemporary issue as of now, what is happening in the now, but there's strings behind that connects to back to the day. And that's where we come in. We use the oral histories to help people reevaluate the way that they're seeing those specific issues. Over here on the side, as you can see, this is another timeline that we were able to put as one of the tests that we were given for the Challenging Racism at UF. Create a timeline. This is there's more boards to this, but you see an effective way that we're able to use those oral histories. We go through our histories. We disseminate some of that information. We look at the historical context from an archival point of view, point of view. Let me see here. But during my time here, let me tell you, I have a couple notes right here. I remember during last year, we finally were able to re-embark ourselves on field work. Even up to this day, Dr. Tees has mentioned, you guys, last year has been like the most heaviest packed field work that we've ever had in SPOHP history. I probably bothered Tamara too much with the field work. Like, hey, do we have funds for this or not funds for that? But those fieldwork experiences, I'll be honest, those are the ones that make this program one of a kind and very unique. For example, I remember during my time, we did one of the best fieldworks that I've done to this time. And I mean, even the one that I just recently did with the Virginia Tidewater Street Water Project, Main Street Tidewater Project. And that was a really good project. We were out there for almost a week in Virginia, conducted interviews with different communities from the Black historical community, understanding times, understanding 1960s times during desegregation, but also segregation, the impacts of segregation and desegregation. And, one thing I've noticed is we don't really talk often. It's the power that before desegregation, the power of the community that they had at one point, and then how a lot of them became disenfranchised or a lot of the businesses closed down afterwards. And we're able to add this view. And now that I'm seeing that I've done different fieldwork opportunities, I have been able to connect the dots that this is not just a one place thing. This is all nationwide that had happened, and that demobilized or at least destabilize the community, the Black community to an extent. Fun projects, the Florida Naturalist Project, that was a fun trip, and by fun, educational. Never learned too much about environmental impacts on our waterways or degradation of the waterways until I joined that program. We had our one of our students lead that project, Basilios Kosmakos, who just recently graduated. I remember we traveled through the Everglades, interviewed the EPA from the Seminole tribe. We interviewed scientists, fishermen, you name it, all from Key West to the Everglades. And then where else did we go? We traveled in then Virginia to add on to those. We crabmen, fishermen, etc. So we're all around. SPOHP is all around, I'll say that. And we also work with local communities during my time that I've worked, such as like Martin County. Martin County is also a very special one that I want to say that I do hold dearly. We transcribe for them as well. There's a lot of projects, like I mentioned, but the one that I think time after time it has shown and proven to be one of the most effective programs up to this day that I could say 100% is the MFP, Mississippi Freedom Project trip. That is transformational. I want to say it's not just a program where you go for 7 days. In this program, you interview civil rights activists, freedom riders. You get to learn about the criminal justice system in today's time, the new Jim Crow era, like what's going on that end. And that event, I was able to coordinate for 2 years. I coordinated that project 2 years, and it was a wonderful experience meeting the communities and always returning back. I think that's one of the things that I should say. It's why we're able to collaborate effectively with communities, because we open our doors and we don't close them down. We stay connected with them. And programs at other universities, I'm not sure how they go about it, but that is definitely one of the keys about having effective community relations, and that's by staying in touch with each other throughout the years. But I think I've said a lot. Do you want me to keep going, or you tell me?
No, it's great to hear all those informations. Some of them, if not all of them, are kind of related to questions I had and to questions I still have, for example, about the COVID pandemic. But we're gonna go there in a few.
Okay.
You've mentioned about the projects and interviews conducted by the program, right? So, and you also mentioned the challenges faced in some of these interviews and projects throughout the years, right? So, but now I want to hear about the relationship between the program and the University of Florida as an institution. So how do you see the relationship between SPOHP and UF as an institution?
Okay, well, ultimately we got to give credit to UF. We are standing here, we're still out here because UF is here. They play a crucial role on that end. Although I think there's more that can be done on UF's end. And when I'm saying that, this program is mainly funded at this time by grants, like I mentioned earlier, and also by private donors that believe in the mission of what I talked to you about. The types of projects that we do, it's not just to create a project that we're trying to do. No, it's something that's beneficial. I want to say beneficial for mankind, for historical purposes, whatever it may be. It's beneficial, whether it's through the Veterans Oral History Project, where we have connections with the Library of Congress, whatever it may be, it's to better, I want to say, give more knowledge to humanity and pass the word of the elders to the next generations before those elders move to the next phase of their life. And unfortunately, that's just how life is. So who's going to recoup or gather those interviews if it's not us? It could be family members, sure. But, I think we have to give thanks to UF that we're able to work with the libraries, that we have those relationships through the repositories that were able to put all this knowledge out into the open through their UFDC, University of Florida Digital Collection, and so forth. So there is a very important role that UF plays, even by providing the space. Now, when it comes to the logistical component and the way that finances and et cetera works, that's a different story. Of course, we are a program. That is something to remember. We're a program. We're not a center, and we're not a department. That comes with a different price tag. And I think at this point, we're at a point of stage that hopefully someday soon, or, in the upcoming years, I could foresee SPOHP becoming a center. And that would open them up to more benefits, more opportunities to carry out more projects and commit to greater, not greater projects, because all the projects I want to say they're great, but to greater possibilities of opportunities for students. That's what I would say. So the university has played a very crucial role. You got to say that from the get-go. The name itself, we're able, because we have the UF logo behind, that has, people listen. People listen when you're coming from an academic background. Or they see that logo and, we are on the top 10, that's for sure. And so that's something to definitely consider. But like I said, with UF, I think some shorts would be that they should be able to support a little bit more programs like ours. And while every department, everyone, there's so many spaces at university that are important, I feel they should not neglect our program by not providing enough funds. And I mean, by funds, I mean like operational running funds or whatever it may be, enough for us to keep thriving. Yes. So we could build this project bigger. But remember, they also call us, UF, whenever they need something from our end, they'll give us a call out. Hey, can you gather this archival information on this specific individual? And we're right there. We provide the information. So we're here also as an asset to the university. It's not just, us working independently from the university. Mm-hmm. No, we're both working together to an extent.
All right. So, and what about the involvement of the program with the academic community? How do you see SPOHP's contribution to the academic community, to the students, faculty members? I mean, how do you see the relationship, like beyond the relationship between SPOHP and UF as an institution? Let's think about people on the ground. How do you see the relationship between the program and the community, the academic community?
The academic community within UF or like...
Within UF.
Okay.
Students, faculty members, I mean, contributions, exchange. How do you see that now and over the years? How, what is your perspective?
Okay. I think from what I've seen, I would say that departments respect us, different programs around the university respect us, students, I want to say, respect the program once they learn about it. I think the challenge here has been, how do we spread the word about SPOHP? Mm-hmm. How can we more effectively gather more folks to join in? Those are things that we have been working over the past couple of years. Create a community's representative list, even departmental list within the campus, so we could do more outreach. But I want to say it's a lot of people, they find this program to be transformative and quite important. We're like the middle people between community and institution. When it comes to faculty, well, every semester, at least since I've been here, we have SPOHP students, myself included. We have gone to different classrooms to present and provide information on our archives. What do we have available? How can they integrate what we have that would benefit their class? Mm-hmm. So we cater to professors to what their needs. It's not just us providing like, this is what we have, and that's it. No, we'll look into our archives. We'll see what can they use and teach people how to access our information. Mm-hmm. So they could gather better research, so they could promote the words, whatever they may need, we're there. And usually this helps the individuals. When we're talking about students more in depth, well, when we go to their classrooms, we also provide, through my time, I did run a volunteer program, and luckily through volunteers, a lot of them were invested in the program, which meant they would transcribe for us. They would move a lot of those projects forward. They would go out and do field work out in the open. So they would participate, and with that, I would say it's an educational experience. For a lot of them, like I mentioned, it's quite transformative because a lot of people see SPOHP as I've been told by a lot of students over and over, this is a space where I feel secure. I feel safe at this space. And it's very unique. I want to say we're a very a very tight niche. A family, I want to say a SPOHP, we're like a SPOHP family. That's what we are. But I think all of our staff, we're all very unique in our own ways, but that's what makes it very special. I want to say very, very special. And I think this program, I don't know why it is, but it attracts those type of people that are, I don't want to say eccentric, but like that think differently, that are different individuals, like I said. But I think that's what makes this program run effectively. And so what I'm saying is that when we're talking about like the community of professors, faculty, or students, they appreciate the work that we do. We have become, even during the Challenging Racism at UF project series, we have become one of those proponents to fight for social justice for the community. And you can see that through the teachings that we did for African American studies, so we could make sure that we could protect our freedom to study African American studies, but make sure that people don't try to terminate that, especially with our political climate today.
Exactly. That's an amazing initiative. And speaking of the social history, the social justice component of SPOHP, what do you make of SPOHP's social impact? I mean, not thinking about UF or the academic community, but what do you make of SPOHP's social impact, and what projects you consider relevant for local, regional, or even national community in light of the idea of social justice and all the initiatives SPOHP have?
That's a very good question. I'm thinking right off the get-go, we went to this national march on Washington, D.C. This was about 2 years ago, I want to say 2 years ago, where we went to Washington, D.C., and we interviewed, unfortunately, families that had somebody that passed away because of police brutality. And this event, it was a nationwide event. We had over 300 families that one member of their family passed away because of police brutality. Mm-hmm. We were outreached last minute. Can SPOHP come over to Washington, D.C. and do interviews with families? I'm like, how many interviews? 80. It's going to be at least 80 interviews. How long do we have? 2 days to get those interviews. And I'm like, whoa, okay.
When was that? Sorry?
2 years ago.
2 years ago.
Okay. 2 years ago, yeah. And actually, that was I remember one of our graduate assistants, Donovan Carter, it was his first week in Latin American Studies program. He went straight with us. I was like, you're a crazy guy. Like, it's your first week of classes and you're going to go with us. That's cool. I'm so for it, but just make sure, you get back on it. But I think that even now, ask him where he's at. He's now working. He just finally graduated, and now he's working with the Samuel Proctor through a National Park Service grant on the Underground Railroad. So that shows you the impact of fieldwork on the students and the people that come through SPOHP. But going back to your question on community's impact, the individuals that told us about those videos, our hopes, we told them, yes, we're going to document this because we understand the urgency of it after George Floyd, after all these murders that were happening around during this time frame. We're like, we need to do something about it. And the best thing that we know how to do for sure, 100%, is collect oral history interviews. It's not about putting yourself in a position, because either way, we're here to listen to the narrative. It's not one side or two sides, but we have to be part of those conversations. And our hopes are here for people to use those interviews in a more proactive way that they could create some type of social change, whether it's through policy or whatever it may be. Although, with a lot of resources, people always asking, how do you guys manage to do so much with so little? We also have a lot of volunteers. Like I said, I mentioned earlier, we run a program. I run the program. Right now I'm transitioning from it, but those programs help us move those collections forward because they transcribe them and now they have access. So it's like keeping true to the communities, to what you say you're going to do. That's just one portion. We've also done with the Alasha County Community Remembrance Committee that there is out there in the or project that's out there. We've worked with them, and right now we're also working with them to sort of help out, document some of the heritage trails in the county and through oral histories. And so, that's what I say. That's effective oral history. That's an effective oral history program. Not just conducting the interview, transcribing the interview, putting material like I showed you together, but making sure that it's there. It's set for as a cornerstone for the next generation to come in and view it, to interact with it. So now we're talking about a level from something becoming just, in theory, to make it, conceptualizing it into reality. You make it into reality. You have something physical to showcase. And that has been the rewarding part, I would say, like with these groups, when we're working on projects like those, that there's an actual end to it, or not an end, just like something that the community could take back with them. And a lot of the interviews, even on our MFP trip, but we travel to Holly Springs. A lot of those interviews are being used by Roots and Wings organization over there. That's another organization that we've worked with, but they're using it for tourism, to bring more people into those regions so they could learn about the community. So when you're asking me, well, how has the community been involved or impacted by our SPOHP overall? Those are just some examples, Helio. There's much, much more. Just even by looking at this, right now, the Florida Naturalist Project, there's over 60 interviews that have been conducted. And one of our colleagues, the one that I told you mentioned earlier, Vasilios Kosmakos, he's going to have an exhibition this upcoming Saturday on the entire collection and the outcomes of that, to discuss water degradation and the impacts of the waterways and how everything's interwoven based on the issues that we discussed in those interviews. And now this is part of an exhibition. So, or even with other folks that created other exhibitions, such as like the Black Thirsty exhibition. That's another one. All this is interactive material for folks to learn about. It's not just the oral history. And, as we're working right now with the NEH curriculum grant, creating curriculum through using AI to help create also curriculum, but process the voices through African American language and make sure that they're getting the right dictation and so forth. That's an incredible project, creating this material, but we do have hurdles when doing that too, though. We have to think about it in political terms, like the climate in Florida specifically. What can you teach and what can you not? And when we're here talking about African American history, what can we teach then? Can we teach our kids about Rosewood Massacre, Ocoee Massacre, Elaine Massacre, anything else? Like, to what level are you allowed to put this out? So nowadays we also have to be careful with how we're promoting our information and how it's reaching out the community. So those are some hurdles, and we're talking here outside of the institution and more of a state level.
All right. And what do you think are some of the program's greatest achievements? Thinking about everything you just said, we can see and we can understand that SPOHP is a big deal, right? What SPOHP is doing is a big deal, has a great impact. So what do you think are some of the program's greatest achievements among so many amazing and interesting projects and initiatives?
That's a good question. the information also you have, I don't want to be too biased either, because you have to think about, I came in, I'm giving you like the period of 4 or 5 years here. I'm not giving you like before my time. I mean, our predecessors, the ones that set the stones in place for us to work on all this, we wouldn't have been able to do that. And this means like even with Marna Weston through the JBA collection, Joel Buchanan archives, there's so much information that was already organized, has been organized. For me, those are some of the best collections that I could ever think about, that our JBA collection through the Fifth Avenue Street collection. That's a very fascinating one for me, because it talks about that's also what Bounce crew helped us put in together the JBA archives, the actual JBA archives, which now holds many hundreds of interviews. And that project specifically talks a lot about the community in Gainesville, our local community, our history. And it goes back to what I was talking about during segregation times, how the communities were thriving at one point in here. But now if you go into those streets, Fifth Street and near University Avenue, you'll see that's not what it is today. It's not what it was, at least back then. And reclaiming those spots, relearning that history, hopefully it pushes us to rethink the way that we're using the spaces as of now. And Gainesville's becoming more gentrified through time, but the communities that live here are being pushed away, and students are coming in. So, there's a lot of impact that we have also created on that end, positives and negatives. But that's just the UF's perspective.
All right. About the pandemic, how has the COVID pandemic, affected, impacted, or influenced the work of the program? I mean, what are the changes that we can see today that came with the pandemic? And what do you make of the impact of the pandemic in the work SPOHP does?
Yeah, I think, and even like showing you the document that I had previously, this literally is called Working Amid the Global Pandemic. Like, how did we go about it? You see me right there? I think, yeah, that's me right there. And in the background, I'm here teaching one of the students about oral history. And it's a little kid too, which is really cool. It was such a wonderful experience. But also all the interviews that we were having that were virtual, we would meet virtually. I mean, since people had to work from home, it was a different era. I'll be honest with you. I think I got Zoom drained, and by that I burned out. I think after we did this for 2 years, that was it, man. That was it. Luckily, we were able to transition back to somewhat normal times, and we're still in that transition. I want to say it's not completed, but the pandemic we had, we didn't have a lot of funds. I remember 1 year, and we had to, the program itself slowed down during that time, during the pandemic. So that really did impact the way that we were not able to conduct as many interviews. Restrictions were in place. It's understandable, but at the same time, that gave us a whole new way to look at how to go about interviewing. And like I mentioned earlier, create those Zoom meetings, now work together, but through Zoom virtually. And we had to figure out how to do that. It's not, yes. People are not used to that. But eventually it came together. It came together, restructured ourselves, reorganized the way that we work together on projects. And I want to say for its time, it was an effective way to do it, at least to that extent with the restrictions that we had. At that time, it was a little bit slow when it comes to conducting oral history interviews. Those were some of the predicaments we had. What else? And yeah, I mean, it was not a good time. We were all scared. Let's face it. It was a scary time. Mm-hmm. But through that, we also started new collections, such as the Pandemic Oral History Project. So that it was really cool, because we were like, we have different collections, such as like the polio collection. Now that I'm looking back to it, I'm like, wow, those interviews were done back in the day. We're talking here over 50 plus years ago. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, imagine if we did this with the pandemic now. So we were able to start the Pandemic Oral History Project, and we worked with other groups to document different hospitals and clinics in the state of Florida and how they were going about processing the pandemic. Where did they have enough PPE gear? Did they not? What was the impact on the patients? We also had that. Available as part of the project collections. So I want to say it opened the window to new interviews and new type of research, which I'm excited. Like, even if it's not right now, because it's still like sort of too near from a pandemic, but imagine like 20 years, like 1918's pandemic, people are going to remember 100 years from now, like, oh yeah, there was a pandemic back in 2020, so it's a different time. So it's going to be interesting. And that's one thing people should also, when we're talking about oral history, while we might not think it's as extremely important to record right now, think about it like, what's the impact of that in the next 100 years? And that should give you a different way of thinking about oral history as well.
Okay, that's fascinating. And that leads us to one of our last questions, which is, in your opinion, what makes the Samuel Proctor Oral History Program unique and important? In other words, why SPOHP matters?
Okay. I think those are two questions separately that I'm going to answer.
Okay.
What makes this program special, or what's it?
Unique.
Unique.
And important.
Okay. Let's begin with the unique portion. This would not be possible, I want to say, and I mean, I don't know any better way to say it, just because this is the way I've experienced it. I don't know, maybe there's other people think differently, but this program would not be the same without our current director, Dr. Paul Ortiz. I think he's a very unique individual that, through his fortitude and commitment to the communities, he has made the commitment to uphold standards, high standards, to the communities, to the marginalized communities, to promote work that could impact the community in an effective way. Like, as much as we want to do these projects, whatever it is, this is all run ultimately by Dr. Paul Ortiz, which is important because this is, through him, we're able to see this vision, this bigger vision. And, back in the day, I would say, well, we have all these collections, but now we have all these collections, let's use them. How can we effectively push all this material out to the open? And that's what he has made me realize. Like, it's not just about collecting and doing like it's a task job, but rather, what do we do with all this material? How can we impact the communities with this material? Look at the higher picture, like bigger picture than what we're just doing. Think about it, not in the community, not in the sense of individuality or organization program, but rather more at a community, nationwide level, state level, nationwide. And I think a lot of that comes from all his experiences, whether it's working with migrant workers throughout the years, boycotting, being in those groups, his history in the military. He's well-rounded in so many fields. It's very unique to find an individual that could do so much the way that he's doing it, and such passion that he carries with that, and commitment. And that perseverance, he has great perseverance just to keep going and doing an effective work. So I don't think all this would be, when we're talking about importance and individuals that have made, why are we able to do this? It's because of him. I wouldn't say that's a big portion, but he instills in all of us that sense of self-worth for the community, that we need to give back. It's not just about us, but think about it in bigger terms, global terms, which ultimately I think that's what I've taken a lot from him that has effectively been helping me carry out other projects. That includes even working, during my MA. I became very aware of a lot of issues with farm workers. Even, look at the shirt I'm wearing here with the Publix and everything. Boycott Publix and Wendy's. But with farm workers, and my research was on farm workers. So I worked with what is it called? Yeah, Farm Workers Association of Florida. And I interned there for a year and then worked with them for a little bit. But I learned so much through them. Like all the people that he's worked in the past with, I've worked with them a lot of those groups, and I could just see it's like a powerhouse. It's a wheel of powerhouse of people that are in that could see the bigger picture. And through them, I feel like they have been my mentors, and they continue to be my mentors, and keep moving me to the next level forward. And as I'm transitioning away right now, that's one of the things that I guess I'm saying it right here, but I am quite thankful and grateful that I had this experience while at SPOHP. And right now, that's the one of the main reasons I want to keep going to grad school, just because of them, because I see like I could do greater change in this world through like the way that we're even doing this program. And if I could go, higher education, if that's one of the things I need to obtain to just, elevate myself, but educate myself for greater knowledge, because I understand, I see the importance of it. I want to keep doing that, not just for me as that first generation, but to keep growing my own family, to show them that if I could do it, they could do it, that they could do whatever they want to thrive for. But the second question was...
Why SPOHP matters.
Why does SPOHP matters? I think more than ever, I don't know, maybe a lot of people might think about it like that, but more than ever now, with our political climate, where there's a lot of censorship happening, a lot of people, departments, are not able to speak up. They're afraid. There's that fear. It's just simple as that. What I recommend is for those departments, other oral history programs, to keep doing what we're doing. We are sort of like the big brother here that hey, can you guys speak up for us? They're always asking us, hey, what are you guys doing? Have you talked about this or not talked about that? And we're out here. These are what people's oral histories are saying. And I think a lot of that powerful impact that we've seen, you could see it through the teach-ins that we had this past year. Hundreds of students came out. A lot of faculty, professors presented together. This was it was a mecca of like knowledge that we need to preserve that knowledge, that we need to show the importance of Black studies, Black history. Where does it begin and where does it end? It's my question, Helio. We have first attack Black history, inclusivity, attack that, attack all this gender studies. What's next? Where is it Latin American studies, Latino studies? What's going to happen afterwards? And so if departments don't speak up, we're not a department, we're not a center, we're a program. We're able to do a lot of those things that we're doing. And so far we've been okay. We don't promote no negativity. We just let other folks present their opinions, their views, and why it's important. And so why is it important? Why is SPOHP it's important? If we don't have our voices, if we don't have SPOHP to provide a voice for others, who's going to do it if it's the people are scared and in fear? That's why I would say, why is SPOHP important? Provide that voice and preserve the voice, preservation of those voices that, we have the centenarian collection. And you hear those 98, 100-year-old voices. Even last year, we interviewed one lady, and she just recently passed away. And I've learned so much, all the way from even to speaking on in regards to the Rosewood Massacre, and then your experiences during World War II, the impact of land in the areas and the regions, self-sustained. You self-sustain yourself through all that. Why am I saying all this? Because these are even things that we could learn from our elders, the importance of all these things. Right now we're living in a very capitalistic, materialistic consumer society, consumerism being the product for all of us, this is what we're selling you.
Yes.
And it's very important for us to look at this through a different lens rather than that lens of, consumerism. And I think this interview shed a new light on how you could still thrive and succeed with not as much, not falling in prey into this way of thinking. But these oral histories are that powerful because it provides that knowledge that you otherwise wouldn't be able to access. That's what I would say. It's powerful. Get another perspective. Listen to the elders. It says qualitative research that could be used for dissertations, policy changes, you name it. Why not? It's very powerful. I think it's too powerful that a lot of people we're not on the radar the way that it should be, I would say. We need to be more on the radar. But being on the radar, what does that mean? Does it put us in a position that we're in trouble? I don't know.
Yeah, given the the political atmosphere of Florida, of the United States, but especially of Florida, it's 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 dangerous, right? To be, yeah, yeah. And from what you just said, what I can make from your perspective is that SPOHP means resistance, right? SPOHP means resistance. Is a channel of resistance and a channel for those who want to challenge the conservatism and the attacks of free speech and knowledge in the state of Florida. So SPOHP is very instrumental, right, in these regards.
Yeah, I mean, just even you mentioned the keyword right there, challenge. We're here to challenge. Give the voice of those that don't have the voice to say what they need to say. We could challenge the system, and that's what through this series that we just had of 9 public programs, 10 public or 9, whatever it may be at this point. We had a lot.
That's a lot.
That's a lot, but in every series we challenge, whether it's through, let's look at the representation through the Gainesville Sun and how did they depict the community during Jim Crow era. And then you start seeing like this is how people are treating the community. I'm thinking right now, even the interviews in Virginia with migrant farm workers, a lot of people don't know about the conditions that they're living on. They're living currently at 3-4 people in one room. You complain or say anything, you're kicked out. We have access to bring those voices of the marginalized into the forefront. And SPOHP is effectively doing that. How could we do that? You might say, whether it's a documentary, whether it's a podcast, which we have a podcast, and even on farm workers, we have that podcast. So and a lot of this work is not just, when I say SPOHP, it's not one person doing it, it's the students doing it, the staff doing it, volunteers doing it, everyone. It's a community. It's like Dr. Teese mentions the SPOHP statement: one community, many voices. That's what it is. We need to provide that. It's not just one person doing all this. We involve as much of the community as we can, even within the UF, whatever it may be. And we work with communities. We are a link between community and institution. And I think that's the key to it. That's what we effectively do well at SPOHP. Great, I want to say at SPOHP. I have not seen another program that has remarkable networks within the community. And that's something I'm proud that, even up to my time, we have kept up with that. And I hope the people after me, they keep doing that. And I'm sure they will. I mean, like I said, this program is run by Dr. Teese. And I think that's a leader that he is, that he moves us in the direction that we need to be moved.
Yeah, it's fascinating. It's definitely fascinating to hear from you and to realize that how big and how important is the work we are doing here in challenging the system and in challenging the injustices that are inherent to capitalism. And that's amazing. Eso es fuerte.
Sí.
Eso es fuerte.
Sí.
Well, my last question for you is looking to the future. Where do you see the Samuel Proctor Oral History Program heading in the next 5 to 10 years? And what are some of the program's goals moving forward?
Okay. 5-10 years.
Or more. It's up to you.
My hopes are that we become a center. I think that's something that needs to happen. We cannot be sustaining ourselves. It's not sustainable to be a program. We've been a program for many, many decades now. But to talk about like long-term growth, we need to become a center. And I hope we do. Or, even like if we could find better ways of funding endowments, creating endowments to self-sustain ourselves. Doesn't take much. All I'm saying, I think if any department could survive, any center would be able to survive if we do become one, it would be SPOHP, because we have an amazing administrative specialist, Ms. Tamara Jenkins, who, we're good. We do so much with so little. It won't need, we would definitely make it every dollar count. I hope that we do become a center. I'll say I hope. And, it's a lot of work. We've put applications in over and over and it hasn't happened. Whatever reason there may be behind that. My hopes are that, SPOHP is transitioning as fast as technology is transitioning. And then when you're talking about doing work, we could continue doing the same work, but the way that we're, increasing our capacity of storage, when we're talking about like UFDC, we have to find more ways and modes to increase the capacity. And, programs such as Descript or, be able to transcribe, they're rechanging the landscape a little bit here and there. They're getting better. I must say, like from 2-3 years when I started, it wasn't not the same. I would say it's like 70% accurate. Now those transcripts are becoming like 90+% accurate. So I could see this 10 years, there's going to be different methodology about how we go about oral histories. Although I must say that I don't think we completely will get erased completely into erasure, transcribing from scratch. Even up to this day, I still teach my students or volunteers that I have to transcribe the way that we were taught to transcribe, because that teaches students how to interact with the transcript in different levels, from learning how to transcribe, you focus your mind into it. You understand the project you're transcribing because you're listening to it, and you're understanding the types of questions that people are asking. So you're getting those interview tactics, techniques on how to go about interviewing. So you kind of knock 3 things in one. And you also show them how to create their own templates. Eventually, if students or whoever's transcribing, they go for higher education or work towards a PhD, they could use this as their own research methodology, and they don't have to ask, how do I go about this? What do I do? They get that experience from here. But where do I see the program? I hope to see it, new computers for sure. Like they mentioned, these computers will probably be obsolete in the next year or 2 years. So we're going to have to think about modes of getting better, new computers, new equipment, new storage, revamp the place a little bit. Those are small things in the smaller scale. But my hopes are that we learn to promote more effectively from what we're doing, those interviews, create more content that's being pushed out there into the world. For the world to see. Ultimately, that's the goal. The more people see this, the more we outreach. Outreach is as important. Because whoever's listening to this could create a total impact. And we've heard family after family, when they find out, oh, we have an interview with your family member, they change they're like, wow, they start tearing up. It breaks them down completely, because like those are voices they haven't heard in years. So I'm hoping that even like the interviews that we have over here in the back, in the archival room, that are still in cassettes from like 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, will one day become digitized. Move forward, add it on to the UFDC, and keep fighting for the mission, for the cause. And the cause, in my opinion, is fighting for the middle class, for the lower class, for anyone that's being oppressed or marginalized when in society. Those are the groups that we need to think about. And like I said, it's not about one color, one group. No, it's just, and we don't discriminate. Like, we have with all folks interviews. The idea is here, just connect the dots, make the bigger picture, understand that bigger picture. And, right now with the AI technology and everything too, we'll probably start creating more curriculum. We'll start creating more material that could be used by people from those interviews. Those are my hopes for the program in at least 10 years. Absolutely. And seeing, and obviously by then, who knows, we'll still have our same director. I don't know, 10 years from now, but whoever comes in better, I hope they keep his legacy alive of all the work that he's done and keep pushing it forward. But with Julian Pleasance and Samuel Proctor, they were the initiators of all this. They were the founders, with Samuel Proctor first, but every group have their own way of doing things. But I mean, if you go into that archive room, you still see like the machines from back in the day, 1960s, 70s, that were used to transcribe, or typewriters, or other equipment, audio equipment. And that's really cool. I think we should be putting all that equipment outside in the hallway, or, like, and ramp it up a little bit.
Yes, yes.
But, I'm definitely optimistic this program is going to be elevated. It's going to get elevated to the next level. Yeah.
Right. Thank you. Thank you very much, Adolfo, for this interview, and for all your knowledge and your passion about oral history, about SPOHP, and about social justice. That's very important. And I also wanted to thank you for teaching us, teaching me personally, everything about oral history and about the way we do, why we do, and how we do it better here at SPOHP. So thank you very much.
Absolutely. Anytime. And it's always a pleasure.
Thank you.
One community, many voices.